How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the Dragon's Den. Today we're going to be doing a deck tech for Karametra, God of Harvest. Before we get into it, I want to let everybody know that this is a deck that is going to be very good for beginners and also super powerful in the hands of any veteran. I wanted to try and make a deck that I thought would be good for everybody and could be a good entry-level deck for anybody to pick up and play with. So it'll be powerful even in the hands of the newest player, and really, really, really powerful in the hands of a veteran player who really knows how to play it. And there's enough mechanics within the deck itself to provide a growing experience for new players. I wanted to try and put something out there for newer players, because at the end of the day, bringing players into our game is how it's going to continue to grow and, keep going so that we can continue to play the game that we love for years to come. Now, this isn't a complete budget build. It's not a deck you're going to be able to go out and build for like $50 or something. But I did try to keep in mind and keep the price relatively low so that it would be a good entry point for somebody that was wanting to get into the game, specifically get into Commander, and have a good, powerful deck. So with that being said, let's get into it. Looking at our commander, we have Karametra, God of Harvest. It is a 5-drop, 6/7 legendary enchantment creature god. It is 1 white, 1 green, and 3 generic to cast Indestructible. As long as your devotion to green and white is less than 7, Karametra isn't a creature. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may search your library for a forest or plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. So essentially, every time you cast a creature, you ramp. That is a very good effect, and I'm sure you can tell this is going to be a very creature-heavy deck, which I've found is good for people that are just starting to get into the game, and creatures on their own are very powerful. So how I decided to put this deck list together is it's got a few different, themes going on. It does a few things very, very well, and that's essentially, it's going to help propel you into the game. So the sub-themes that I kind of got going on in this deck are enter the battlefield, effects on creatures, life gain, and landfall. So there's 3 different sort of sub-themes going on in this deck with a good balance, and they all kind of play off of each other because of this commander. So we're going to start getting into the cards. They're in no particular order as to what their functions are in the deck, but there's ramp, removal, board wipes, creatures, draw. We're trying to hit everything in this deck. It's a good balanced mix. So we have Llanowar Elves, ramp. Elvish Mystic, another piece of ramp. Fyndhorn Elves, ramp. And these are all stapled onto creatures, so you're going to be, later in the game, these are 1-drops. So you're playing these in the early game to get to your commander faster. If you get them in the later game, you're ramping by getting a land, and it's going to give you an extra mana on your next turn as well. Avacyn's Pilgrim, ramp. Rampant Growth. This is one of the very, very few pieces of ramp, or really any cards in this deck, that aren't stapled onto a creature, but it's just another piece of ramp to go get a land, put it onto the battlefield. Soul Ring is a must include in every commander deck. Arcane Signet is a staple. You put it in every commander deck. Selesnya Signet is another 2-drop piece of ramp. Most of the ramp in this deck is either going to be 1 or 2-drop. That's kind of become the standard for commander, but you want to be able to get to your commander as fast as possible. Soul of the Harvest, this is going to, now whenever creatures enter the battlefield, you're going to be drawing cards. Guardian Project does the same thing. When creatures enter, you're going to be drawing, which is something you're going to be doing a lot of. Regal Force, when this comes into play, draw a card for each green creature you control. So you're going to be drawing a lot of cards whenever you play this. It plays into the enter the battlefield effect kind of theme that I have going on in this deck. Shamanic Revelation, is going to draw a card for each creature you control, and then you're going to gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So it sort of plays into the life gain a little bit, and it's going to draw you some cards, kind of keep your engines going. Return of the Wild Speaker, you can draw cards with it because your commander, it's going to be online most of the time with the amount of creatures you're going to have on the board. So it can either draw you a bunch of cards, or you can pump up all the creatures you're going to have to be able to swing in for the win. Return of the Wild Speaker is a very, very versatile card. I absolutely love it. Lifecrafter's Bestiary, it's going to allow you to scry, smooth out your draws, and allow you to draw extra cards whenever you cast a creature spell. Swords to Plowshare is one of the best removal spells in the game. Path to Exile, another great piece of removal. Beast Within, this can hit anything, not just creatures, so Beast Within is very, very good in this deck. Anything that's better than a vanilla 3/3 is a good target. Generous Gift does the same thing, but it's a white spell instead of a green spell, and gives an elephant instead of a beast. Aura Shards. I thought this would be a really, really good card in this deck because you're going to be playing a lot of creatures and you care about creatures entering the battlefield. So you put out Aura Shards and you're casting your value creatures and everything else, and you're pretty well keeping your opponents in check, saying, hey, you don't get to have artifacts and enchantments. So it's a very, very good, versatile, reusable piece of enchantment and artifact control. Crossing Grip, split second, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Nobody can respond to it. You just blow something up. Wood Elves, it enters the battlefield and you ramp. So now you ramp when you cast and you ramp when it enters the battlefield. Ramp is so strong because you're just going to be able to play a bunch of different spells. It's really, really, really good. Farhaven Elf, it also ramps when it enters the battlefield and when you cast it if you have your commander out. Soul's Attendant. This is where some of the life gain starts to come in. So Soul's Attendant, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may gain 1 life. Well, we care about enter the battlefield effects, and while this doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect for itself, it cares about your other creatures entering the battlefield. Same thing with Soul Warden, and Essence Warden, and Tristani, which can also populate if you make some tokens in this deck, which you can. Daxos does the same thing, and it has toughness equal to your devotion to white, so it sort of plays into the devotion thing a little bit, but there's not really any of that in here outside of that. And Suture Priest, which is also going to gain you life when your creatures enter the battlefield, but it'll also deal damage to your opponents. So we like the enter the battlefield effects that are stapled onto a bunch of our creatures, and so now we're playing creatures to get value and we're gaining life on top of it. And we're going to be ramping, so now you play a creature spell, you gain some life, you ramp, and you get whatever effect is on the card. They all sort of play off of each other. Prosperous Innkeeper does the same thing, but it also makes a treasure token when it enters. Courser of Crewfix. So Courser of Crewfix is really good because you can play the top card of your library if it's a land card. Now every time a land enters, you're gaining a life too. So if you have any of your little like Soul's Attendant, Soul Warden types deals out, and Courser of Crewfix, you cast a creature, get a land, gain a life. Creature enters, you gain a life. So now you're gaining life for basically every game action that you take, because most of the things you're going to be casting your creatures, and you're going to be playing lands every time you do that. It plays really well into the life gain theme of the deck. Yasharn Implacable Earth. This is good because it's also going to go search some lands out of your library and thin your deck some. And it also says players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. So you shut down any sort of like aristocrats, sacrifice style decks, things like that. And you're also saying that people can't pay life to get extra effects. It really, really shuts down certain types of decks. And it's really a must include in this particular deck, because it helps you in so many different ways. Crested Sunmare. Other horses you control have indestructible, and at the beginning of each instep, if you gained life this turn, create a 5/5 white horse creature token. So this is one of the token generators in the deck. So like Tristani, it can populate, it can make it can give you more horses, so that it does have some utility outside of just gaining life when things enter the battlefield. But this says at the beginning of each instep. And a lot of the little creatures that I just showed you a second ago, it's whenever any creature enters the battlefield, you gain life. So if you have those out with Crested Sunmare, now you're getting 5/5 horses at the end of each of your opponent's turns if they cast any creatures at all. This is a very, very good card in this deck. Elder Gargaroth. It's just such a versatile creature. It doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect itself, but just having it on the battlefield you're going to create a 3/3. You can create a 3/3 beast, gain 3 life, or draw a card anytime you attack or block, which is something you're going to be wanting to do a lot. It feeds into your life gain. It helps you get draws. It helps you create tokens. It does a bunch of different things. Eternal Witness, it has an enter the battlefield effect that lets you get something back out of your graveyard, so it can help you recover after a board wipe. Timeless Witness does the same thing. Teleportation Circle, at the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target artifact or creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. So now your cards with your enter the battlefield effects and everything, basically you're blinking it and getting it an additional time at each and every single one of your end steps. Conjurer's Closet does the same thing, but it's an artifact. So you're doubling up on you're getting to use one of your creatures enter the battlefield effects again every single one of your turns. Panharmonicon, doubling up on all of our enter the battlefield effects. And the way this works is, say you have a couple of your little life gain guys out and you play your wood elves. Karametra says on the cast you're going to go tutor for a land. That land comes into the battlefield, and then your wood elves enters. Well, say you had 3 of your life gain guys out. Normally you'd gain 3 life and go search for a forest. Instead, you're going to gain 6 life and go search for 2 forests. It doubles up all of your enter the battlefield effects. Sun Titan, this is another card that's really going to help rebuild after a board wipe or something. When it enters, you're going to get your little creatures back, which is most creatures in this deck. When it attacks, you do the same thing. It's really just going to help you rebuild. Night of Autumn, whenever it is a battlefield, choose 1. Put 2/1/1 counters on it. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, or gain 4 life. It helps with the life gain. It helps be removal if it needs to be. It's versatile. It's a very good card in this deck. Avenger of Zendikar. Avenger of Zendikar is really, really, really good in this, because every time you cast a creature, you're getting lands. So now whenever you eventually cast Avenger of Zendikar, you're going to create an insane amount of tokens, and then every time you cast a creature after that, you're going to get lands, triggering that landfall ability, making your tokens absolutely massive. Hornet Queen is another good thing, because it enters the battlefield and it makes 4/4 green insect creature tokens with flying and death touch. So you're going to have 4 flying death touchers, or a total of 5 flying death touchers, counting Hornet Queen herself. And then with your little life gain things out, well, now you're gaining 5 life whenever you cast this, and you're ramping. So you're gaining life, you're ramping, you're doing things. Basically, that's what everything in this deck does, is you're wanting to play cards, get value, gain life, draw cards, make creatures, go big, go wide. It all sort of plays in together. So while it's got 3 different themes going on, the enter the battlefield, the life gain, and the landfall, the cards that I selected all synergize together and push forward, and they bounce off of each other and play off of each other very well. So you're really, really getting a lot of strong effects out of all 3 sub-themes. Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger, he doubles your mana and he keeps your opponent's lands tapped down. It's really just in here because it's a really big, awesome creature. You're going to have a bunch of lands anyway. It's going to be easy to cast him. You're going to ramp whenever you cast him anyway, and gain life when he enters off of your other creatures. So while he doesn't have an enter the battlefield effect himself, it's a really big, cool creature. Elesh Norn is sort of in there for the same reason. It's going to help pump all of your little creatures and wipe all of your opponent's little creatures out, making it easier for you to swing in for wins and things of that nature. Fumigate is one of only 2 board wipes in the deck, and it gains you 1 life for each creature destroyed. So if you have a big board, or your opponents have a big board and they're out racing you or anything, you play Fumigate, you blow up the board, and you gain a bunch of life. Wrath of God is in here because it's kind of like the standard for white board wipes. It's a 4-drop board wipe. Destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated, so you don't have to worry about people being left with a board after you board wipe. Karmic Guide helps you rebuild after those board wipes, just like Timeless and Eternal Witness and Sun Titan do. Kind of help you get your things back, probably quicker than all of your opponents are. Llanowar Visionary draws a card and it ramps. Elvish Visionary draws a card when it enters. Reclamation Sage destroys an artifact or enchantment when it enters. Rampaging Baloths plays into the landfall, so now You're casting creatures, you're getting lands, and you're making 4/4 tokens. Felidar Retreat plays into the landfall. It's an enchantment itself, but you can either create 2/2 Cat Beast creature tokens, or you can put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. So it can either help you finish games by pumping your creatures up real big, or give you a bunch of creatures to be able to go wider. So it sort of plays a dual purpose. Zendikar's Royal plays into the landfall thing. You're making 2/2 elementals every time a land enters the battlefield. It's going to be happening a lot because it's going to happen every single time you cast a creature. Scoot Swarm. Scoot Swarm is insanely powerful in this deck. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. If you control 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. So once you hit that 6 land mark and you start playing lands and you have Scoot, you are going to double the number of Scoots you have every turn. And considering you're going to be casting a lot of cheap value creatures and getting lands every time you do it, this can get out of hand very, very quickly. Amaria Shepherd is another card to help you rebuild. Every time a land enters, you're getting a card back to your hand, unless it's a Plains, in which case you're getting it back to the battlefield. Eerie Interlude can allow you to exile your entire board and then return them all to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step, so it can help you actually get around things like board wipes, and help you, like if you just have a bunch of really good value creatures out, you blink them all in one turn and just do this over and over again. Especially if you have something like Timeless Witness or Eternal Witness out and you play Eerie Interlude, you just bounce your whole board, get everything back at your end step, use the Eternal Witness or the Timeless Witness to put the Eerie Interlude back into your hand, and then you're doing this every single turn. Sad Robot, Solemn Simulacrum, which can ramp you and draw when it dies. So, you know, it's a decent card in almost any deck you put it in. Acidic Slime. When it enters the battlefield, you're going to destroy target in artifact, enchantment, or land. So it's more artifact and enchantment removal, help you keep control of that. Wall of Blossoms. Good blocker. It draws a card when it enters. Charming Prince actually does a lot. So it's in here because it's super versatile. It can either help you scry 2 to help smooth things out. You can gain 3 life playing into your life gain deal. Or you can exile another target creature you own and return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step, so you can actually flicker another one of your maybe better creatures like your Avenger of Zendikar or your Hornet Queen or something. Wall of Omens. Another good blocker that draws a card when it enters. Emil the Blessed is really good in this because you can pay 3 and just blink a creature, and you can do this as many times in a turn as you can produce 3 mana. You're just sitting there flickering something, so you're either drawing cards, making tokens, gaining life, doing all of it at the same time. Really good. And then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay a hybrid green or white. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on it. If it's a unicorn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on it instead. There's no other unicorns in the deck, so that second part, like if you want to put a 1/1 counter on one of your creatures when it enters, you very well could do that if you want to. You know, it's not something I really see being useful a whole lot, but that ability to be able to flicker is extremely good. Eldrazi Displacer's in here for the same reason. You can pay 3 and you can flicker a creature. So you're reusing your enter the battlefield effects. Spirited Companion is a 2-drop. It draws a card when it enters. Skyclave Apparition is another piece of removal. So you cast it, you can hit some of your opponent's things. They get some tokens whenever it leaves, but you're going to be able to take out bigger threats than what the tokens they're going to get are. And Birds of Paradise, which is the final piece. It's just a piece of ramp. It's really, really going to be helpful for you. So it's another just 1-drop creature. So we like ramp. But that right there is the entire deck list. I'm not going over any of the lands or anything, because the land base, it can simply be nothing but forest and plains if that's all you have available to you, and this deck will still be good. So I know it sort of seems a little redundant that like everything sort of does the same stuff, but that's the glory of this deck, is that while your commander doesn't seem like, it just puts you a land into play when you cast a creature, if you build the deck right and you just have creatures with good enter the battlefield effects, creatures that gain you life when your creatures enter the battlefield, things that like landfall triggers like the Rampaging Balos and the Avenger and Felidar Retreat and stuff, you can sort of have 2 or 3 different themes going on and everything, and they all play off of each other. So you cast a creature, you make some you cast a creature, you get a land. Getting a land makes some tokens. Well, now those tokens trigger your Soul Wardens and things like that, and they gain you life, and they all sort of just play off of each other over and over and over again. You're ramping, you're playing a bunch of spells, you're drawing a bunch of cards, and there are definitely ways that this deck could be improved. This is not the strongest version of this. You can even the little 3 theme thing that I got going on with it, there are ways to make it better 100%. This is not meant to be the strongest version of this deck, but a deck that is strong and competitive and can play with anybody. It can hold its own in any group, and it can be piloted by even the newest of players and played by even the people who've been playing the longest and just want a good strong deck to pilot. So with that being said, I really hope y'all enjoyed. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you think this deck is cool. Maybe you want to build it. If you do, awesome. I really encourage you to give it a try. And if you know somebody who's trying to get into the game, please show this to them. Let them see it. Let them build it. Teach them, because this is a deck that's going to be easy enough for them to pilot, but it can have a learning curve to teach them the game progressively rather than just throwing them into the deep end. So with that being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.